Hi, I'm Jason. I'm a product manager on the Chrome OS team, on the Chrome OS for Enterprise and Education team. I've been at Google about 11 years. As you probably can tell from my accent, I'm not from the US. I'm from the UK. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit about Chrome OS and how this operating system can help enable secure end-user productivity at your various organizations. A few questions first, because I always like to know a little bit about the audience and people I'm speaking to. Who here is from outside the US and traveled here today? OK, a few of you. So you're probably like day one, day two, jet lag, right about now. I'm with you. And how, some Chromebook questions. How many of you use a Chromebook at home? Oh, wow, a few of you. Good. At work? OK. You don't need to be here then. What about, how many of you know either your own kids or other kids that use Chromebooks in schools? All right, quite a few of you. Not surprisingly, Chromebooks have had a tremendous traction within schools. So much so, in fact, that I think in a number of countries, we are now the #1 device chosen by many schools for use in the classroom. In the US, FutureSource last year said that across all of 2017, and if you look at all laptops and tablets shipped into K-12 schools, 60%, or around near close enough to 60% of all those devices were in fact Chromebooks. And these devices have had a big role to play in the digital transformation of those classrooms. What's interesting is what's driving that sort of digital transformation in the classrooms is that the schools and the school systems want to equip those students with key 21st century skills. Those skills being communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And the driver for that are companies like Google, companies like those represented in the room, because they want the future employees and the current ones to have those skills, have those people to have competency in those skills. Now, what roles and what kind of jobs would these students, after they leave school, go into? Now, some of them actually probably go into roles that don't even exist today. I certainly, this role when I went to school didn't exist, my current role. But if I poll you guys, and I won't do that now, you will get lots of different answers. Some of which probably will cluster around the theme of a knowledge worker. So an architect, software engineer, product manager, a lawyer, you get the idea. Does anyone actually know where the term knowledge worker came from? Where it was first coined? Correct, yes, Peter Drucker. Do you know when? Close enough, 1959. So yeah, first coined by Peter Drucker, very clever man. I think some call him like the father of sort of modern management. He wrote a book in 1959 describing the various sort of economies and the shifts in economies. And in there, he described the information economy. And the information economy was sort of predicated on information being sort of a scarce resource that's valuable. And only very few people, the knowledge worker, could sort of access it and get value from it. Fast forward almost 60 years to today, and that premise of data being a scarce resource that only a few people can get access to just doesn't hold true anymore. Data's everywhere, and the cloud has helped enable that. And there's so much data that and it's impossible for one person to have expertise on it all, and it means that your employees have to work together. They have to collaborate. They have to communicate. There's so much data, you have to critically think about all the different elements, about which is useful, which is not. You have to be creative in order to derive those insights and value. And those insights and value. And the world has changed. And you see that more so in our personal lives. Hands up who has used a music or video streaming service in the last 7 days. Like, all of you. Most of you on your journeys here to San Francisco probably use some sort of travel service, ride-sharing app. Some of you may even be using a travel service app to stay in someone else's home. All those examples have massively disrupted their various industries. and creates a whole new definition. It's the same for businesses as well. That shift to software as a service, those SaaS apps. I think Gartner in 2016 said that shift rate through to 2020 is 3 times as fast for SaaS as it is for PaaS, platform as a service, and twice as fast as infrastructure as a service. So when it comes back into your workplace, come back to workplace technology, the key question to ask here is, are those technologies and platforms keeping up with the trends that we're seeing? For example, why are we still using the same platforms as we were 20 years ago? Because when those students and even current employees are using these cloud apps all the time in their personal lives, they're going to expect their workplace tools to keep up, to be as easy and simple to use as those they use on day-to-day. And all this is to say is that when we think about workplace technologies, we should be thinking about the cloud worker. So those workers that want to access their information, their apps, anytime, any place, on any device. Those that want to collaborate. And it's not just the knowledge worker that I was talking about earlier that can stand to benefit. All workers, whether that's on the front desk, in the back office, across different industries, healthcare, retail, they all benefit. And the line in the sand is suggesting that this is happening now. If you think back to workplace technology 10, 15 years ago, everything was centered on a device, or your data, or your applications was on that single device. If you lost that device or something went wrong, best case scenario, you lost a few hours of work. Worst case, you lost everything. Fast forward to today, you could argue that the most critical access point is the browser. The browser enables you to access your applications or information across devices. It enables a degree of freedom and flexibility that you couldn't do before. And in a recent study we commissioned with Forrester, we see that play out. About 2/3 of the employees surveyed said they used the browser much more than they did 2 years ago. In fact, about 1 in 4 could already be classified as a cloud worker. And these cloud workers, on average, use about 4.6 hours per day in the web browser doing their daily tasks. And that trend's going to continue because employees like using browser-based apps. 94% said that they were as easy, if not easier to use, than the desktop equivalents. And this is leading to enterprises taking a more cloud-first approach when it comes to their business apps. And when you survey the employees about what role the IT department should play, and they say that they expect the IT department to continuously improve their working environment. And what does improvement mean here for them? So 80% of them said they need to have access, instant access, from a variety of different devices. 71% said they wanted technology to help them do that collaboration and communicate with their colleagues. And 69% of them said they want technology allows them to work remotely for better work-life balance. On the last point, work is now less about a physical space, a place. It's more about a virtual space. My own example, I'm from the UK, but the teammates I work with are spread all around the world. I have those closer to home in Munich, in Zurich, but I work all the time with colleagues down the road in the Bay Area, in California, Mountain View, even have a colleague in Mexico City. And when you ask these same workers kind of what device and technology attributes they're interested in and what they want, number one, 78% say that the ability to fix issues without losing any productivity was most critical. I think 68% mentioned that they want to be able to access it everywhere. And I think 64% say they want to have continuity on their passwords, their extensions, and things across the board. I don't know about you, but those sort of attributes aren't necessarily those that I would associate with everything on a single device model. So this is where Google Chrome Enterprise comes in. This is our browser, our OS, our devices, built for the cloud-first enterprise. And we announced the Chrome Enterprise license last year in the fall, where Admins have access to over 200 different policies to configure their environments. It works well with third-party EMMs, and you get 24/7 support from Google. And it's not just benefits on the admin side as well. You get great benefits on the employee side, on the worker side. So I want to go through some of these today with you all, talking about sort of the OS and how that improves workplace efficiency, some of the hardware, and some of the applications. All right, Chrome OS. So Chromebooks were designed from the ground up to be a different type of computer. So the team, when they were building it, had the cloud first in mind. And that affected all the different design decisions. If you go back to the very first time Google mentioned Chromebooks and introduced it to the world, it was in a blog post back in 2009. And there wasn't a device. There wasn't even code. It was more like a little manifesto. It's like, hey, guys, we're going to build an OS. And if you read that original blog post, it talks about 3 core principles that the team really believed in. The first was speed. Second was simplicity. And then security was the third. The first 2 were all about efficiency. The team were frustrated that the devices at the time took too long to boot up, took too long, and got in the way of what the end user wanted to do. So one of the things they looked at was boot up time. How quickly, from cold, a device would boot up so that the user can get to where they want to get to as fast as possible. And they stripped that down to around 10 seconds. They looked at the boot up process, kind of took things out, and really made that 10 seconds. And even actually today, that was back in 2009, on the later platforms, we can get that down to about 6. And the best thing is that they start at 10 seconds, and Chrome OS is architected in a way that you don't get the traditional bloat from traditional OSs, that devices even sort of back from the very first one still start in 10 seconds. That third pillar, security, was incredibly important to the team, because you can't really do cloud computing if you don't have a secure endpoint. So one of the things they did was mandate that all Chromebooks had a hardware secure element on them. And that enabled us to do things like verify boot. So every time a Chromebook boots up, it will check everything to make sure nothing's been tampered with. In fact, that actual process adds, I think, about 2 seconds to the boot time, but we felt that was a good trade-off to have. And it enables us to encrypt the local user spaces as well. And with all sort of devices and OSs, you need to constantly update them in order to keep the security patches on there. And we had an interesting approach to this. Who likes updates in this room? Who likes doing updates? No one. No one's like sitting through the 1 or 20, 2 or 20, 3 or 20 stuff. And the team realized this and said, well, actually, we got to make that user experience as clean as possible for users to continue to accept those updates. So they did a bit of smoke and mirrors. So Chrome OS actually has 2 copies of the OS partition on the device, because we have a pretty lightweight footprint. One that's actually active, and one that's dormant. What happens is when an update's available, and just as a side note, as an admin with a Chrome education license, you get some controls in terms of when those updates get pushed. The OS will download the update. It will install it on the dormant copy. And then when all that's said and done, and the user's quite happily being productive in the active version, it will interrupt the user, and only then, to say, hey, you have an update available. Please restart your device. Actually, it's the only time we see a restart button on Chrome OS is when the update actually happens. User clicks on it, does its 10-second round trip, and now the previously active version is now dormant. Dormant is now active, and they're away productive again. And they like that experience, so they continue to accept those updates. So just some of the little things in the background there that we do. Another reason why Chrome OS is excellent for the cloud worker is ChromeSync. And this is our ability to, this is the sort of syncing of the apps, bookmarks, and those kind of things in the background that's tied to the user credentials. I use this all the time, because I have a Chromebook I take for meetings where I can take notes and present slides. But on my desk, I have a monitor hooked into a Chromebox, a powerful Chromebox. So a simple use case, but I go to my meetings, take my notes, go back to my desk, pull up the document, log into my Chromebook, pull up the document, tidy up my notes, and send it out. It's seamless. The next one I want to talk about is a little bit of myth busting. A lot of people think that without an internet connection, Chromebooks are expensive paperweights. They're not. Although they're built with the cloud first in mind, they work well offline as well. Case in point, I had an 11-hour flight from the UK over here. I was somewhat productive. I managed to use Gmail and the new Gmail client. I'd gone into settings, enabled offline, and that cached up to 90 days of my inbox and all my attachments. So I continue catching up on my inbox and getting back to those emails that I'd sort of forgotten about. Drive works offline. There's deep integration with G Suite. So you get the recent files that are synced in the background. And you can just continue editing. So I was working on these slides while on the plane over here. And then we now have access to Android apps that run on Chromebooks. So a lot of those apps work well offline or designed with flaky connections in mind. Although I have to admit, on the Android app side, they probably weren't all work-related on the flight over. OK, the last thing I want to talk about Chrome OS is the way we continually add new features. So those updates aren't just security updates. The device continually gets better. One of the sort of areas that we're sort of making better is using machine learning and AI to increasingly personalize that device. So whether that's in the sort of app launcher to surface the apps that we think you're going to use next, or with better resource management, with the RAM, with the battery, the screen brightness, those things, you'll see those updates come through over the next few months. And lastly, with different input methods. This is quite a cool example. So a number of these Chromebooks now have the ability to have an active stylus. And normally, if you use styluses, what you find there's a slight lag when you're kind of sort of drawing on that thing. And that's reasons being that it takes a while for the screen to detect the stylus and then go back and render the actual line on the screen. But what we've done, we actually picked stylus technologies that allowed pretty high degree of resolution to allow us to apply some ML algorithms. So what actually happens on a Chromebook for those apps that have integrated with those APIs is that the device will pre-draw where the line is going to go. So from an end user point of view, it feels pretty seamless and pretty zero latency. So just some examples of how we're building some of these things into the OS. And that theme of artificial intelligence ML is not just confined to Chromebooks across many of our products now. Some of the examples include from G Suite, our productivity toolset. Quick access is really useful. It surfaces documents that they think the user is going to use next, and we've shown that it's cut search time by up to half. If you've used the new Gmail client, you've probably noticed a smart compose, smart reply. I use this all the time. And one of the cooler examples that I really like is in Google Sheets, where sheets and spreadsheets are used in many organizations, but only about a third of people know how to write the formulas to actually sort of turn that data into insights. And the team built an explore function where a user can type in a natural language kind of question and get sort of data, get useful insights from the data there. All right, so that is the OS. Let's talk about devices a little bit. You probably heard me use Chrome OS and Chromebooks interchangeably a little bit, but that's partly because the first Chrome OS device was a Chromebook with the CR48. But Chromebooks generally represent our clamshell and convertible form factors. But we also have other form factors with Chromeboxes and Chromebases. Chromeboxes are sort of small form factor desktops. They're about yay big, pretty small. The all-in-one Chromebases are all-in-ones, and they're great for sort of on-the-desk kind of workstations. What most people don't realize is how different actually Chrome OS is put together, Chromebooks and Chromebases actually put together. And I can understand that, because when you look at one of these devices, it has what a traditional laptop has. It has a screen, it has a keyboard, ports, touchpad, those kind of things. And you look at the spec list, and it has a processor, RAM. It has all those things that you would expect. But how we piece it together is very, very different. We don't let anyone just build a Chromebook, for example. We actually, as Google, approve every single device. but it goes much deeper than that. We don't just say, hey, as long as you got these components, you're fine. On every single component, we have to approve that component. And each of those components have to hit very strict minimum criteria. So things like the hard drive, the SSD, has to hit certain read-write speeds. The Wi-Fi module has to hit certain throughputs and those kind of things. So we actually keep quite a tight control in terms of the list of components that can be put into Chromebooks. And the reasons why we do this are threefold. One, it ensures we have a good quality product, so you don't get a manufacturer swapping in other components. You get, the other reason is that it allows us to really tightly optimize the OS with the hardware. So you can get sort of really good, efficient performance out of the OS. And thirdly, it allows us to standardize on certain things that really matter to us as Chrome OS. So things like that secure element that I talked about earlier was one of those. Second one, the Wi-Fi. We had AC Wi-Fi right from the beginning. All-day battery life. And my personal favorite is USB-C charging. It means that when I travel, I only need one charger. I can use the same charger for my phone as for my laptop. The other myth I want to bust a little bit is there's a perception that Chromebooks are sort of inexpensive, small 11.6-inch clamshells. And that statement might have been true about 5 years ago, but the world's moved on. The Chromebook world has moved on massively. And now all these OEMs are building devices built for enterprise. Whether that's a clamshell model like the Dell Chromebook 13 or the Lenovo ThinkPad 13 or the HP Chromebook 13, or convertibles such as the Asus C302, or the latest convertibles with stylus in, like the Google Pixelbook or Samsung Chromebook Pro, or the latest announced, I think Acer announced in New York in May, the Acer Chromebook Spin 13. All these have premium builds, the latest Intel processors, and the best way to actually go experience is actually hands-on. And we actually have them all downstairs in the exhibition hall on the left. If you go to the Cloud Worker section, they're all laid out there for you to go and have a look at if you're interested. All right, so that's devices. Let's get to arguably the most important part, what you can do on the Chromebooks. Because at the end of the day, we've architected the whole thing to make sure the computer gets out the way. If you've been following the Chromebook story for a while, you've probably noticed that the capabilities has increased tremendously over the last few years. Not only now can you get access to all your SaaS apps through the web browser, but you can also access your legacy apps through VDI, mobile applications through Managed Google Play, and soon, Linux apps. But let's talk a little bit about the Chrome browser, because as I mentioned at the top of this talk, this is arguably the most critical access point. Remember those 4.6 hours those cloud workers spend in it? It won't be a surprise to you all that Chromebooks come with Chrome browser. How many of you use Chrome browser in their work? Yeah, pretty much all of you. Like about 2 billion, I think, monthly active users that we have. And all the great benefits that you have, that you're aware of using Chrome browser is available on Chromebooks, whether that's sandboxing of the tabs, whether that is using safe browsing, which we use our algorithms to protect everyone around the world. And as an admin, you get the ability to configure that browsing experience for the users. So for extensions, for example, you can blacklist certain ones. You can ensure certain ones are actually pushed down to the user. And in terms of SaaS apps, Chromebooks are very well integrated with G Suite. I've mentioned already that syncing of those recent files for use offline. But the actual Google Drive is actually built into actually the file manager of Chromebooks. And we're adding Team Drive there soon. The G Suite editors are sort of already loaded into the launcher. So there's no additional configuration that you need to do. And my personal favorite is that you can actually do sketches and notes in Keep directly from the lock screen. So for those stylus-enabled devices, if you have that idea at the tip of your head, you don't need to then open up your Chromebook, type something in, type in your password, open up Keep, and then sketch down your idea. You can just click the button on the lock screen and start sketching straight away. And the sort of better together with Chromebooks means that your employees and workers can work better together in real time. And that real-time collaboration is something that's been at the heart of G Suite right from day one. And I've been at Google 11 years. I've been using these tools, and I can't imagine going back to a world where collaborating on a document meant that someone in the team had to be a master of that document and you just email them all the changes through. Couldn't go back there. OK, Android apps. So last week we announced that Managed Google Play is officially out of beta. And we're excited to bring Android apps to the Chromebook platform because it opens up Chromebooks to this massive, successful ecosystem that we have with, I think, 5 billion app installs, I think 2 million apps that are available. And from an admin, your experience for Managed Google Play is that you can customize your own store for your employees. You can whitelist certain apps, configured down to the user level. And also, as well as getting access to the popular Android apps, such as from some Adobe or from Cisco, you can also run your private in-house apps as well. And you can either host them on Google Play and take advantage of the worldwide distribution that we have and Google Play Protect, which scans those kind of 50 billion apps daily for malware, or you can host them privately as well. All right, Linux support. We announced this at Google I/O earlier this year. And we are excited to do this because there was a sort of class of more technical cloud workers that wanted access to the terminal or IDEs or Android Studio that we're excited to come. So that should be coming soon in a later sort of beta and stable channel on Chromebooks. And lastly, VDI. There's always going to be those legacy applications. But we've integrated well with the likes of Citrix, VMware, and Amazon Workspaces and others. So that your worker can still access those legacy applications in secure environments. OK, so I've talked about the OS, I've talked about devices and the applications. I just want to tie it all together a little bit in terms of a couple of use cases. So I'll start close to home. In the UK, there's a retail bank, Royal Bank of Scotland. They standardized on a virtualization platform a few years ago. And they were also encouraging, I think, BYOD. Although for certain workers who wanted to work flexibly, they had the duty to provide devices for them. So they did their research, they looked at thin clients, they looked at traditional OSs, but they settled on Chromebooks. And the reason being was that, one, it was incredibly secure. I think the penetration test team were slightly annoyed at the fact they couldn't get anywhere. They were very easy to use from a user point of view. And from an admin point of view, they're incredibly easy to manage. So much so, actually, the story with Chromebooks didn't end at just that one use case. When they were looking at other problems or other challenges they had in terms of workplace technology, they were like, I wonder whether Chromebooks can help there. And because they were so easy to configure and try, they started trying in all these different other places. And they've since rolled out Chromebooks in, I think, their mobile retail kind of trucks. And also, I think they're looking at other use cases in-store as well. The second example, which we just recently released a blog post, some of you may have heard earlier, is from Veolia. It's a European theme to these case studies. They are a global sort of water, waste management, so energy management kind of company, headquartered in Paris. They had gone through a huge transformation in terms of their end user computing, and so moved about 250 of their legacy systems over to G Suite. And in parallel, they were trying Chromebooks, and they were getting a huge amount of benefit from those trials. They were citing that actually that collaboration and real-time communication became a norm for the company. And they're now on the journey to, I think, roll out Chromebooks to all, I think, 170,000 employees around the world. The last example I'll give is Grab and Go. Grab and Go loaner devices. In all our Google offices, we have IT help desks. We call them tech stops. They're fantastic. And if you have a problem with the computer, you can go there and they generally can fix it. But if that fix takes a bit longer than the couple of minutes that you may have, then you can grab one of these Grab and Go Chromebooks, log in, uses ChromeSync, you carry on where you left off. We actually have some Grab and Go devices actually just down over there. I'm not sure whether there's any left because they've been incredibly popular. If you want to learn a bit more about that program, we launched a white paper on this last week to enable other companies to actually build the same things for their own companies as well.